All right. We'll have you sign a consent form. We just want to see if you left a note or anything inconspicuous, something like that.
All right.
So if you're good with that, we'll have you sign a consent form allowing us to search your house, and we'll wait for our sergeant to get here. But we'll grab that. You don't plan on going anywhere, right?
No, I was just going to walk around the neighborhood just to clear my head.
Yeah. Which company do you work for? Anadarko. What do you do for them?
Operator.
So you work like 7 days a week?
5 and 2, like Monday through Friday. I'm doing 8 and 6 next month.
Okay. So today is Monday?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Let us grab that form, and then we'll wait for our supervisor, and then you can either stay here or you can go walk the neighborhood, whatever you'd like, while we look through it. All right. Let's go grab that form. We'll be right back with you, okay?
You have to stay here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. You got one?
I think so. So Chris, it's your house. You can go inside with us if you'd like, or you could stay out here. It doesn't matter to us.
Doesn't matter. I mean, free reign, just whatever you got to do.
Okay.
Like I can chill on the decks on the side of the sun, but
okay.
Cool.
All right. Whatever you'd like. How long have you guys been married?
So we've been together 8 years, married 6 this year.
Okay. And this is very unusual behavior?
Yeah, we can get that dog out of here.
Okay.
She's gonna flip.
On the counter right here.
Okay. So when you guys come home, do you usually use the front door or the garage door? How do you guys?
I usually open the garage door, come in.
Okay.
She uses front or garage. It kind of depends.
Okay. Is that a ring out there?
Oh, that was.
No, the doorbell, is that a ring doorbell?
Yeah, like when you got a visitor, it does. But I don't think the speaker is on to where you hear it. Like by.
Okay. I guess my question for you is, would it show her leaving with the kids? Did you have any alerts?
If she came out here, yes. Like if.
Did you have any alerts today with that?
Just when her friends were here.
Does it only record when the doorbell rings, or anytime someone?
If you're like right.
What if I told you that on the morning of August 13th, 2018, a man stood in front of news cameras, wiped a tear he didn't actually feel, and begged the public to help him find his missing wife and daughters, while knowing every single second exactly where they were? What if I told you that the same man who kissed his children goodnight, who posted family photos with heart emojis, who coached his daughter's soccer games and called himself a proud dad, had already ended their lives that very morning? What if I told you that investigators almost missed it? That if it hadn't been for one woman, one phone call, and one gut feeling that refused to be silenced, this man might have walked away completely free? This is not a story about a monster who looked like a monster. This is a story about a man who looked like your neighbor, your coworker, your friend, and what happened when the mask finally came off. This is the story of Chris Watts. And I promise you, by the time this is over, you will be questioning every assumption you've ever made about the people closest to you. Before we go any further, if you're watching this and this is your first time on this channel, I need you to stop for just 1 second. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications right now. Because what we do here on Dark Trail Files is not just storytelling. We go deeper. We analyze behavior. We connect the dots that mainstream media leaves behind. We dig into the psychology, the timelines, the evidence, and we tell you what it all means. Every week, we bring you cases like this one. Cases that will shake you, challenge you, and sometimes make you question everything. You do not want to miss a single upload. Subscribe now and join the Dark Trail Files community. The truth is always deeper than the headlines. Let's go find it together. To understand what happened on that August morning in 2018, you first have to understand who Chris Watts appeared to be. Because the contrast between that image and the truth is what makes this case so deeply unsettling. Christopher Lee Watts was born on May 16, 1985, in Spring Hope, North Carolina. He grew up in a modest household, described by people who knew him as quiet, reserved, and eager to please. Those who went to school with him remember a boy who didn't cause trouble, who blended into the background, who never drew attention to himself. That quality, that invisible, people-pleasing nature would follow him into adulthood, and it would ultimately become one of the most dangerous things about him. After high school, Watts moved to Colorado, where he began working for Anadarko Petroleum as an operator. He was good at his job, reliable, punctual, the kind of employee no one ever had to worry about. And it was in Colorado that he met a woman named Shannon Razusek. Shannon was everything Chris appeared not to be. She was vibrant, expressive, emotional, and full of life. Born in Aberdeen, North Carolina on January 10th, 1984, Shannon had grown up knowing what it meant to struggle. She had been diagnosed with lupus as a teenager, a condition that had shaped her resilience in ways most people couldn't understand. She was a fighter, and when she found Chris Watts, she believed she had found her person. They married on November 3rd, 2012, in a ceremony that Shannon described as the beginning of the life she had always dreamed of. In the years that followed, they had 2 daughters together. Bella Marie Watts, born December 17th, 2013, and Celeste Catherine Watts, born July 17th, 2015. To the outside world, they were a picture-perfect family. Chris and Shannon share their lives extensively on social media. Shannon was a brand ambassador for a multi-level marketing company called Thrive, and she documented her days with her daughters with a warmth and genuineness that attracted a large online following. Their Facebook and Instagram feeds were filled with birthday parties, backyard playdates, matching pajamas, and family portraits. Chris appeared in many of these videos, smiling, hugging his daughters, laughing with his wife. He looked happy. He looked present. He looked like a devoted father and a loving husband. But behind the carefully curated photos, the Watts family was in trouble. Financial trouble, for a start. Court records and financial documents later revealed that the family was significantly in debt, behind on their mortgage, carrying substantial credit card balances, and struggling under the weight of expenses that outpaced their income. Shannon's Thrive business, while generating some income, was not enough to stabilize their finances. And Chris, though employed, was not bringing in enough to cover the gap. There was also trouble in the marriage itself. People who knew them well described a relationship that had grown tense and distant. Shannon had confided in close friends that she felt something was off with Chris, that he had become cold, withdrawn, that he seemed distracted and disengaged in ways she couldn't quite explain. She didn't yet know why, but she had begun to feel it. And here is where the story takes a darker turn. Because while Shannon was trying to hold her family together, while she was posting smiling videos and planning their next chapter, Chris Watts had already started building a different life entirely. Her name was Nichol Kessinger. She was 30 years old at the time, a geologist and landman who worked in the same industry as Chris Watts. They had met through work, and by the summer of 2018, their relationship had grown into a full romantic involvement. Nichol Kessinger would later tell investigators that Chris had represented himself to her as a man who was separated from his wife. He had told her the marriage was over, that they were in the process of splitting up, that he was essentially a free man, just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. She believed him. She had no reason not to. He was calm, consistent, convincing. He maintained the story with the same easy confidence that he maintained everything else in his life, quietly, efficiently, and without any visible cracks. But there was something Nichol Kessinger did not know. Something that Chris had kept from her entirely. Shannon Watts was 15 weeks pregnant. She and Chris were expecting their third child, a boy they had already named Nico Lee Watts. Shannon had announced the pregnancy to her family and close friends with tremendous joy. She had been documenting the pregnancy online, sharing the milestones with the warmth and openness that defined her presence on social media. Chris knew about the pregnancy, of course, but Nichol Kessinger did not. And when investigators later showed her the evidence, when she saw proof of what Chris had hidden from her, she was visibly shattered. The man she thought she had been falling in love with was not who he had told her he was. Investigators sat down with Nichol Kessinger shortly after Chris Watts was arrested. What she said in that interview, the shock on her face, the disbelief in her voice, tells you everything you need to know about just how deeply Chris Watts had deceived the people around him. Watch her reaction when she is confronted with the fact that Sean Ann was pregnant.
We introduced ourselves in the lobbies and earlier, so we're just going to do that again real quick. My name is Kevin Kovac. I'm with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and we're assisting the Frederick Police Department with this case involving Chris Watts. And this is Tim Martinez, also an agent at CBI. Sir, if you just introduce yourself.
Dwayne Kessinger. I'm Nicole's father.
Dwayne, what's your birthday?
November 3rd, 1958.
And home address for you, sir?
8801 West 65th Avenue.
Let's see.
And that's Arvada, 8004.
And a cell phone or home phone or where?
720-982-4547.
Thank you. And Nicole, can you just introduce yourself for the recording?
Nicole Kessinger. Do you need all the other stuff?
Yes, please.
I live at 12255 Clark Court, Unit 612, phone number 720-656-9605.
Claude Court, is that? I think we determined it was North Glen, right?
Yes.
You know your zip code?
80249.
Okay. Can you speak up just a little bit so the recorder, I know you're tired and you're stressed, and we won't be here any longer than we have to be. You've already had a conversation with people before. You came here on your own free will to talk to us. We picked you up at your request and brought you here. You can get up and leave at any time. You don't have to talk to us. If there's a question you don't want to answer, don't answer it. If you don't want to talk anymore, just tell me I want to leave. And I'm kind of in the way of the door, but you're not being interrogated as a criminal suspect. We're here to understand your relationship with Chris and what you know about Chris and his family and events relating to Chris Watts. And do you know him as Chris or Christopher?
Either one.
Okay. So the phone number that you reached him on, can you tell me what that number was?
I think I deleted that out of my phone too. I just cut him out of my life. It's a 910 number. You guys have it.
Now we gave it to Mark yesterday.
Yeah, I probably have it, but just in case.
I don't have it.
If I recited it to you, would you know it?
Just the first three numbers.
But you know it as a 910 number?
Yes, that's what I do know. I mean, that's what I got.
North Carolina or something.
North Carolina. Okay. So let's just start with a timeline of your getting to know Chris, how you guys met, where you met, all those things. And let's just run. And I'm not going to ask you specific questions unless I think it's necessary. I'll let you just tell me your story. I think it's a little bit easier that way. So I just want to know how you met him, where you met him, how long you guys were dating, and those kind of things initially.
Okay. I think I met him sometime in June, probably early June. It might have been May. It was just talking at work. It was pretty casual. And he didn't have a wedding ring on his finger. And every time I talked to him, he didn't tell me that he was in a relationship. He didn't even mention his kids right away either. And then one day he told me that he had 2 kids. I was like, that's pretty cool. And started telling me about his kids.
That sounded like a sarcastic comment.
No, I thought it was kind of cute. I was like, oh, he's a dad. It was right around Father's Day too. So whenever that is in June.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm not good with holidays.
and kids, and then it was Father's Day shortly after
Okay.
that. So that's what I do now. And I was like, I thought it was cute. And then he's telling me about him. He's pretty excited about him. And then he mentioned that he did have a significant other. And then he told me that those two were in the process of a separation.
Did he mention the children's name or his significant other's name?
I didn't know his significant other's name for a while. And then I think he told me his kids' names pretty quick, but to be honest with you, on an exact date of when that happened, I don't know.
So in May and June, first of all, where do you work?
I work at Anadarko Petroleum Corporation. I'm contracted to Anadarko Petroleum Corporation
Okay, and you work out of an office setting where?
in Platteville, Colorado.
Okay. And Chris also works out of that location, per
Yes.
se.
Yes. He's in the field, but he comes into the office with his team.
So you work, what is your job responsibility?
I do health, safety, and environment.
Okay, so you work in the office and you take care of health safety for Anadarko is an oil and gas company, right?
Yes.
So you're doing health safety in the office and Chris works in the field
Yes.
as a, what kind of job does he do?
He's an operator, so I don't know like all of his daily duties, but he's a field operator, so he works with like the oil wells.
So he goes out and does work on those, whatever
Yes.
that work might be, but he comes into the office frequent.
In the
or-
mornings, his team meets in the mornings. They're not all in there every day. Some days some of them are in there, some days other ones are in there, but in the mornings, typically from like 6:15 to probably 7, somewhere around there.
And is that where you met Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just take us through kind of a little bit of the early part of how he courted you or you courted him? I don't know which one happened. How you guys got to know each other?
I guess we just started talking. He actually, so part of my job is to manage the gas monitors that we have. So Anadarko requires all of their field personnel to carry like gas monitor sensors for toxic gases, and it's my job to control the inventory, any issues, anything like that. And we were having some pretty serious like equipment issues, and we had numerous amounts of people coming in my office one day, and he happened to be one of them. And I'd seen him before, like they meet in the lunchroom, and that's where I go put my lunch in the fridge. So I'd seen him, but I didn't ever like talk to him. So that day we just started talking, and then every time I saw him in the hallway,
What you just saw is not just a woman expressing surprise. What you just saw is someone realizing in real time that the person she trusted had been lying to her on a fundamental level. She had been a character in a story she didn't know was being written, and the story was about to get far darker than she could have imagined. By the summer of 2018, Chris Watts was living a double life with an ease that, in hindsight, is chilling. He was going to work, coming home to his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters, attending barbecues and family events, and simultaneously carrying on a relationship with another woman, making plans, having conversations, building something secret in the shadows of his supposed normal life. Then, in late July of 2018, Shannon took the girls and traveled to North Carolina to spend 5.5 weeks with her family. It was during this time that her relationship with Chris grew even more strained. Friends and family later recalled that Shannon had grown increasingly worried. She felt Chris becoming more distant, more cold, more reluctant to communicate. She reached out to him repeatedly. He responded minimally. And in the weeks she was away, the distance between them became something she could no longer explain away. She confronted him about it. She asked him directly if he still wanted to be in a marriage. And Chris, true to form, gave her just enough reassurance, just enough emotional presence to keep her from fully panicking. He was, by every account, extraordinarily skilled at managing the emotions of others while revealing nothing of his own. On the night of August 12th, 2018, Shannon Watts returned home to Frederick, Colorado, after that long trip away. A friend named Nichol had driven her home from the airport. It was late, around 2 in the morning. Shannon was tired. She was pregnant. She was carrying the weight of a marriage she feared was falling apart. She went inside. She went to bed. And that, as far as the rest of the world knew, was the last time anyone saw Sean Ann Watts alive. Here is where we need to stop and talk about Nichol Atkinson. Because if there is one person in this entire story who changed the course of events, who refused to accept a convenient explanation, who trusted her instincts when everyone else might have waited, it is her. Nichol Atkinson was one of Shanann's closest friends. She was also her colleague. Both women were involved with the Thrive brand, and they had grown close over years of working together, traveling together, and supporting each other through life's challenges. Nichol knew Sean Ann. She knew her patterns, her habits, her rhythms. And on the morning of August 13th, 2018, she knew immediately that something was deeply wrong. Sean Ann had an important appointment that morning. A prenatal appointment she absolutely would not have missed. Nichol had been in contact with her the previous day, and they had plans. So when Shauna didn't show up, didn't answer her phone, and didn't respond to any messages, Nichol didn't shrug it off. She didn't chalk it up to oversleeping or a change of plans. She went to the house. When she arrived at the Watts home, she found Chris outside. He was calm, almost eerily calm. He told her Sean Ann had left early that morning with the girls. He wasn't sure where she had gone. He seemed unconcerned. He was heading to work. He said this like a man who had somewhere to be, not like a husband whose pregnant wife had vanished. Nichol was not satisfied with this explanation. Not even close. She stayed. She looked around. She spoke to neighbors. She called Shanann's phone repeatedly. She noted that Shanann's car was in the driveway. She noted that Shanann's purse was inside the house. She noted that Shanann's phone, which Sean Ann was never without, had also been left behind. These were not the signs of a woman who had walked out the door with her children on a spontaneous trip. These were the signs of a woman who had not left willingly. Nichol Atkinson did something that changed the trajectory of this entire case. She called 911. This is the moment the investigation begins. This 911 call, made by Nichol Atkinson on the morning of August 13th, 2018, is the thread that would eventually unravel everything. Listen carefully to what she says and how she says it. This is a woman who knows in her gut that something is terribly wrong.
Hi, Stacey. My name's Nichol, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night because we were out of town together, and we were on the way back from the airport, and she's having issues, and she's pregnant, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning, and I've gone to her house, and her car's there, and stuff like that, but she won't answer the door, she won't answer phone calls, she won't answer text messages, and I'm just really, really concerned, and she had a doctor's appointment this morning, and she didn't go to it, and I don't know what to do. I've called him and talked to him, and he said that she went on a play date with her other two daughters, but, like, if she went on a play date, they're both in car seats. Why would she not take her car? Perfectly understandable. Do you happen to know her address, Nichol? I'm asking to send it up at her house. It's 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick. And then I said, like, Chris, can you just come home and check to make sure she's okay? Because the shoes she wears every single day are right inside her door. And he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 3 minutes. Well, that was 45 minutes ago. And I called him and asked him again, can you please come home? And he's like, I'm 45 minutes out. Okay, Nichol, I'll go ahead and call in. I just need you, if you could please repeat her address to make sure I have it entered correctly. 2825 Saratoga. It's SARCOGATR. Okay. And the thing stands for trail. Thank you. And can I get a phone number that you're calling me from? Area code first. 970. Thank you. Okay, Nichol, tell me exactly what happened. So, we were out of town for work, and we flew in last night. Our flight got delayed, and I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and she was very, like, distraught and out of the sorts because we're out of town for work, and we flew in last night. Our flight got delayed, and I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and she was very, like, distraught and out of the sorts because her and her husband are having issues. So he was concerned because she wasn't like eating or drinking and stuff like that. So then this morning I was like, let me know if you need me to take you to your doctor's appointment because you're not feeling well. And I have called and texted. I've come to her house. She's not answering the door. She's not responding to text messages, phone calls. I've had other friends reach out to her. None of us can get her to respond to us. They have 2 little girls that are 3 and 4. I mean, there's no movement in the house whatsoever. And he states that she didn't take them to daycare and was going to go on a play date, but they're both in car seats and her car is here. What's her name? It's in the garage. And I'm like, well, huh? What's her name? Shanann Watts. It's SHANANN Watts, WATTS. Do you know her date of birth or how old she might be? Oh, if you would have asked me that, I would know it. That's okay. If you just know her approximate age, he's gonna be in his early 30s. Bear with me here one moment. When was the last time that you heard from her? When I dropped her off at her house, I watched her, made sure she got in the house. That was at 2 a.m. It was actually 1:55. I literally lived like 5-10 minutes from her. And her vehicle is it parked in the garage? Yes. It's a white Lexus. And I probably, because I was concerned, I know I don't want to get a doctor's office in trouble, but I went to the doctor's office because I've been used in as doctors, and I said, I know you can't give me things because of HIPAA, but can you just tell me if she showed up at her appointment this morning? And the lady was like, no, she did not. Okay. Is that's unusual behavior for her to not show up to her doctor's appointment? No. Okay. No. Pregnancy, like, she was so excited and then got blindsided from her husband that he wanted to separate a week ago. And her husband's name is Chris? Yes, his name is Chris Watts. And he told you that she went on a play date today with the girls. Okay. Yeah, but they're 4-year-old and she told me last night when we were driving home, she's like, the morning's going to suck because I have to take the girls to daycare tomorrow. And I made the statement, well, you could keep them home with you. And she's like, no, that'd be more exhausting. She's like, I have to get up and take them because I have a doctor's appointment at 9. Bear with me here one moment. I'm just typing this information in the call here. And I'm not trying to cause problems more between them. I just want to know she's okay. Okay. What's her phone number? No, give me 1 second and I'll look it up for you. It is 910-850-3286. Okay. And Chris told you that he was on his way. Yes, I just talked to him. Well, I talked to him earlier. One of our other friends did via text because I was going to the doctor's office, and she said he would be here in about 30 minutes, and that was at 1:08. And then I called him. I said, Chris, I'm at your house. I'm not trying to cause drama or anything. I just need to know your life, okay? I was like, where are you? And he was like, I'm on I-70. I'm about a half hour to 45 minutes out. And I just said, okay. And then I hung up and called you guys because I'm just worried. Okay, Nicole, what kind of vehicle are you in right now? I'm in a white Dodge Dart. Okay. Alrighty, we do have a call in, Nicole. We'll have an officer come out that way as soon as we can. I would just advise you, to not try to make entry into the house or anything like that. until the officers can get there. In the meantime, if you do hear from her, just give us a call back and let us know, okay? 911. Okay. All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye. 2825 Saratoga Trail of a party who's checking on a friend who's pregnant, who's not answering the door.
That call set everything in motion. And what is remarkable when you listen to it is the clarity and conviction in Nichol's voice. She is not hysterical. She is not dramatic. She is a woman stating facts, connecting dots, and refusing to be dismissed. Without that phone call, without that precise, determined response to her instincts, Chris Watts might have had days, possibly longer, to construct and reinforce his story. The investigation might have begun as a routine missing persons case and moved with far less urgency. Nichol Atkinson did not give him that time. Law enforcement arrived at the Watts home on Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado. And this is where the story shifts into something that investigators, behavioral analysts, and criminologists have since studied and analyzed in extraordinary detail. Because what Chris Watts did in those early hours, the way he behaved, the way he spoke, the story he told, is a masterclass in what deception looks like when it is performed by someone who has planned for it. When the first officers arrived at the Watts home, they were responding to a welfare check on a missing pregnant woman and her 2 young children. They had no reason, at that point, to suspect anything beyond a domestic situation that had perhaps turned volatile and resulted in Sean N. leaving with the girls. It was not, on the surface, a criminal matter. Not yet. Chris Watts met the officers outside. He was wearing work clothes. He appeared calm and cooperative. He answered their questions without hesitation. He explained that Sean N. had come home late the night before, that they had spoken, that she had seemed upset, and that when he woke up the next morning, she and the girls were gone. He said he had assumed she had taken the children somewhere to give them both space. He said he was worried, but not frantic. He said this all with a steadiness that, under normal circumstances, might have read as composure. But investigators and behavioral analysts who later reviewed the body cam footage from those early hours noted something striking. Chris Watts, while speaking calmly, displayed a pattern of behaviors that are now recognized as significant red flags in the context of deceptive accounts. He paced. He shifted his weight. He made eye contact when speaking, then broke it at specific moments, particularly when asked direct questions about where he thought Shauna might have gone. He smiled at points where smiling made no contextual sense, and he overexplained. He offered details that had not been requested, filling silence with information as though afraid of what the silence might suggest. Behavioral experts who have since analyzed the footage point to these behaviors not as conclusive proof of guilt. No single behavior is, but as a constellation of signals that, taken together, indicate a person constructing a narrative rather than reporting a genuine experience. When people are genuinely frightened for a missing loved one, their distress tends to be consistent, unfocused, and difficult to contain. They ask questions. They demand answers. They follow officers from room to room. Chris Watts, by contrast, seemed oddly contained, as though he knew the parameters of the situation and was carefully operating within them. What you're about to see is body cam footage from the early hours of the investigation. Officers are at the Watts home, speaking with Chris. Pay close attention to his body language, his word choices, and the moments where his composure seems slightly, just slightly, out of sync with the gravity of what he is supposedly experiencing. These are the moments that investigators would later scrutinize in extraordinary detail.
All right. We'll have you sign a consent form. We just want to see if you left a note or anything inconspicuous, something like that.
All right.
So if you're good with that, we'll have you sign a consent form allowing us to search your house, and we'll wait for our sergeant to get here. But we'll grab that. You don't plan on going anywhere, right?
No, I was just going to walk around the neighborhood just to clear my head.
Yeah. Which company do you work for?
Anadarko.
What do you do for them?
Operator.
So you work like 7 days a week?
5 and 2, like Monday through Friday. I'm doing 8 and 6 next month.
Okay. So today is Monday?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Let us grab that form, and then we'll wait for our supervisor, and then you can either stay here or you can go walk the neighborhood, whatever you'd like. We can look through it. All right, let's go grab that form. We'll be right back with you, okay?
You have to stay here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I think so. So Chris, it's your house. You can go inside with us if you'd like, or you could stay out here. It doesn't matter to us.
Doesn't matter. I mean, free reign, just whatever you got to do.
Okay.
Like I can chill on the decks on the side of the sun, but
Okay.
cool.
All right. Whatever you'd like. How long have you guys been married?
So we've been together 8 years, married 6 this year.
Okay. And this is very unusual behavior?
Yeah, we can get that dog out of here.
Okay.
She's gonna flip.
On the counter right here.
Okay. So when you guys come home, do you usually use the front door or the garage door? How do you guys?
I usually open the garage door, come in.
Okay.
She uses front or garage, it just kind of depends.
Okay. Is that a ring out there?
Oh, that was
No, the doorbell, is that a ring
yeah,
doorbell?
like when you got a visitor, it does, but I don't think the speaker is on to where you hear it. Like by
Okay. I guess my question for you is, would it show her leaving with the kids? Did you have any alerts?
If she came out here, yes. Like if
Did you have any alerts today with that?
just when her friends were here.
Does it only record when the doorbell rings or anytime
If
someone?
you're like right here, it should just start. The proximity should hit up.
Okay. And if you had anything on that today?
Just her friends.
And what time was that?
12:10 and about 10 minutes afternoon.
Okay. But nothing between the time when she got here?
No,
morning.
like she got here at 2. The only thing
This
that
morning?
Was, yeah, 2 o'clock this morning. So
Okay.
1:48 on here. And the only thing that was weird was that the garage door said it was left open after I left. And it might have been the sensor, but like my phone doesn't show when
For your alarm?
Yeah, it doesn't show if it shuts.
And who's your alarm through?
Vivid.
Okay.
But Nikki, her friend that came here about 12:10, she said the garage door was shut when she got here.
Okay.
That was the only thing that was weird.
All right. Were you going to hang out there or you want to come in here?
I'll sit right here.
Okay. Where's the percent?
On the counter.
I'm still recording, so.
Yep. See this?
Whose phone is that?
I believe that is his. Bomb overtook hers. That's from vomiting.
Is that a diary or what is that?
It's for work, I believe. I was thinking it was possibly a diary, but it's talking about like motivation stuff.
How did you say the kids were?
Forest.
This is very neat for having 2 little kids.
Inside the house, officers began to take note of details that didn't align with Chris's account. Shanann's purse was on the kitchen counter. Her phone was there. Her wedding ring was left behind. Her medication, which she needed regularly due to her lupus diagnosis, had not been taken. For a pregnant woman with a documented medical condition to leave her home without her medication, her phone, her purse, and her keys is not just unusual. It borders on impossible. And the officers, trained to notice these things, began to quietly exchange glances. The house felt wrong. That is the only way to describe what multiple people who entered it that morning reported feeling. It felt wrong in the way that only a space that has witnessed something terrible can feel wrong. Not loud, not obviously disturbed, but subtly, unmistakably off. The girls' rooms were in order. Their beds had not been slept in, though Chris had claimed they were home the previous night. The master bedroom showed signs of recent activity. And throughout the home, the absence of Shanann and her daughters felt like something more than a family that had stepped out for the morning. And then, in the middle of all of this, something happened that investigators would later describe as one of the most striking moments of the entire early investigation. Chris Watts' phone rang, and the caller ID told officers everything they needed to know about who he had been lying to and who he was still trying to manage. While officers were still inside the Watts home, while Nichol Atkinson waited anxiously outside and investigators quietly noted the evidence that didn't add up, Chris Watts received a phone call. The caller was Nichol Kessinger, his girlfriend, the woman who believed she was involved with a man who was separated from his wife. The woman who had no idea that the reason investigators were standing in that house was about to redefine everything she thought she knew about Chris Watts. Chris stepped outside to take the call. Officers observed this. One officer, whose body cam captured the moment, watched Chris move away from the group, lowering his voice, shifting his entire body language. The ease and practiced calm he had been projecting inside the house seemed to change. Not dramatically. Chris was never dramatic, but perceptibly. Something in him was managing 2 different realities simultaneously, and both of them were beginning to buckle. This footage captures the moment Chris Watts receives a call from Nichol Kessinger while law enforcement is actively searching his home. What you'll notice is not just the act of taking the call. It's the shift in his posture, the way he distances himself, the visible effort it takes to maintain 2 separate stories at the same time.
There's a driveway from the townhomes that backs right up to our fence.
Now, would you think that's a female friend or a male friend?
Honestly, I'm not going to put anything by it right now.
All right. Well, we appreciate you letting us go through your house.
No problem. I'm
Definitely not in there.
No. Hey, hold on one second. Call you back. Bye-bye.
Was it in the car? So she came out the door then?
Yeah, Chris, I think, what's your name again?
I'm Sergeant Bakes.
Bud Bakes.
Good to meet you.
Chris Watts.
So she doesn't have any family or anyone around here?
Neither of us do. They're all back in North Carolina. We moved here back in 2012. Came out here to visit some friends during Thanksgiving, fell in love with the place, moved out here a few months later.
Does she have any friends around here?
Just for friends?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got friends in Frederick, Erie, Aurora, that part of Erie, Broomfield, Parker.
Have you tried to contact any of
Oh
them?
yeah, we've exhausted every option. The last thing I'm going to do is hospitals. Hotels. There's so many, but
And no one's heard from her today? Have you checked your bank accounts?
that's another thing I was going to do because I don't have access through here.
Let's go check those and see if she pulled any cash out or if there's any strange charges or anything.
Okay.
Can you log?
I can't log in because she does all the finances.
Okay.
So I know her password. I just don't have her used already. Not sure what she would have used that way. Sorry, my phone's just blowing up there.
I think it's fine. Who do you guys bank through?
USAA and Chase.
Can you call them and see if
Yep.
there's been any activity? Any withdrawals or anything? And then the suitcases that she came home this morning with, which ones were those? Was it
The black one that's sitting right there.
Not the one in the bedroom?
Mm-mm. That was from the last trip, when we just got back a few days ago from North Carolina. She went to Arizona like 2 days later. That was when we just got put back down in the basement.
You guys don't have any stockpiles of cash or anything in the house that she would have had? If she needed cash, she needed to go to the bank to get it?
If there is, I would not know about it. If there was, I didn't know.
You know how much cash she usually carries with her?
It's usually not, maybe like 100.
Your turn signal's on.
It's been on. I may have to turn in a hurry.
Distance for you want
What is so striking about this moment is not the call itself. It is what the call reveals about the architecture of deception that Chris Watts had been maintaining. He was not just hiding a crime from investigators. He was hiding an entire relationship from his wife, hiding the existence of his wife and her pregnancy from his girlfriend, and hiding the reality of what he had done from everyone. He was operating 3 layers deep in deception. And the pressure of holding all of that together in real time in front of law enforcement was something even Chris Watts' methodical, controlled, calculated, could not sustain indefinitely. Meanwhile, Nichol Atkinson had not left. She was on the phone with Shanann's family in North Carolina, relaying what was happening, keeping them informed, refusing to accept the explanation Chris had given her. Shanann's parents were frantic. Her mother, Sandra Razisek, would later describe those hours as the most terrifying of her life. Getting information in fragments, unable to get on a plane fast enough, calling everyone who might know something, praying for an explanation that made sense. Back at the house, the investigation was shifting. What had begun as a welfare check was quietly, methodically becoming something else. Officers were asking more pointed questions. The details Chris was providing were being tested against the physical evidence in the home. And the evidence was not cooperating with his story. By the afternoon of August 13th, 2018, law enforcement had begun treating the disappearance of Shanann Watts with the full weight of a criminal investigation. The missing persons report filed by Nichol Atkinson had evolved into something far more serious. And Chris Watts, who had spent the morning projecting calm, was increasingly being viewed not as a grieving husband and father, but as a potential subject of interest. There are moments in investigations where the air in the room changes, where the questions stop sounding like concern and starts sounding like interrogation, where the person being spoken to begins to feel the ground shifting beneath them. By that afternoon, people who were present later described exactly the kind of shift happening with Chris Watts. Investigators requested that Chris come in to speak with them at the Frederick Police Department. He agreed. He cooperated. He sat down. And he continued to tell his story. The story of a wife who had left, of a marriage that had been struggling, of a man who was just as confused and concerned as everyone else. He was composed. He maintained eye contact. He answered questions. He did everything that a cooperative, innocent person is supposed to do. But here's the thing about investigators who are trained in deception detection. They're not necessarily looking for the person who falls apart. They're looking for the person whose story doesn't breathe. A true account, even a distressing one, even one told by someone who is frightened and confused, has a quality of organic uncertainty to it. Real memory is imperfect. Real people backtrack, correct themselves, remember new details as they speak. Fabricated accounts, by contrast, tend to be too clean, too structured, too consistent in ways that real human memory never is. Chris Watts' account was too clean. He knew what time he had woken up. He knew exactly what was said between him and Shanann. He knew precisely which direction she had driven when she left. He had a ready answer for every question. And where a genuine witness might have said, "I don't know," or "I can't remember," or "Actually, wait, let me think about that again," Chris Watts had an answer. Always an answer. Smooth, immediate, preloaded. Investigators quietly noted all of this. They also noted what was coming back from the physical evidence. Shanann's phone had been located. Cell tower data was being analyzed. Her credit cards had not been used. Her car had not moved. And most critically, surveillance footage from the neighborhood was being reviewed. And that footage was about to change everything. A neighbor's security camera had captured something. In the early hours of August 13th, 2018, in the darkness before dawn, it had recorded Chris Watts' truck leaving the family home. And in the bed of that truck, according to what investigators would later determine, was something that should not have been there. The truck had driven to a location in Weld County, Colorado, to a remote oil and gas works site operated by Anadarko Petroleum, the same company that employed Chris Watts. It was a site he knew intimately, a site that had become, in the hours before anyone knew a crime had been committed, the final destination for everything he had tried to hide. Investigators now had a direction, and Chris Watts, who had spent the entire day performing grief he did not feel, was about to face a question he had not prepared for. On the afternoon of August 13th, 2018, Chris Watts stood in front of news cameras outside his home on Saratoga Trail and made a public appeal for the return of his family. He was dressed neatly. His voice was measured. And what he said, and the way he said it, was, to anyone watching, either the performance of a devastated husband or one of the most chilling displays of calculated deception ever captured on camera. He spoke about Shanann. He talked about his girls. He said he missed them. He said he wanted them home. He said, at one point, and this is the detail that stayed with people long after the case broke, that he hoped wherever they were safe. A father speaking about his children as though they might be anywhere, as though they might still be found. He knew they would not be found alive. Behavioral analysts who have reviewed that press conference footage in minute detail have pointed to numerous indicators that are consistent with deception. The crying that produces no tears. The catch in the voice that arrives at moments of performance, not genuine grief. The references to his daughters in ways are slightly too formal, too composed, too rehearsed, as though he is playing the role of a father rather than being one. But it is not just what he said. It is what he didn't say. He never once asked whoever had taken his family to please return them safely. He never addressed a potential abductor. He spoke about his wife and children as though they had left, not as though they had been taken. It is, in hindsight, one of the most studied pieces of footage in modern true crime. Criminologists have used it to illustrate the profile of the rehearsed account. Grief counselors have pointed to it as a contrast case. What genuine grief looks like versus what the performance of grief looks like. And ordinary people who watch it, even without any psychological training, consistently report a feeling of something being deeply, fundamentally wrong. That night, while the press conference footage played on news stations across the country, investigators were working. They had the surveillance footage. They had cell tower data. They had the physical evidence from the house. And they had something else. An emerging picture of who Chris Watts really was, separate from the story he had been telling. On August 15th, 2018, 2 days after Shauna and Watts had been reported missing, investigators focused their attention on the Survey 319 oil and gas site in Weld County, Colorado, the site where Chris Watts had been working in the days leading up to his family's disappearance. What they found there was the answer to every question that had been forming since Nichol Atkinson made that first phone call. The bodies of Bella and Celeste Watts, 4 years old and 3 years old, were discovered submerged in oil storage tanks on the property. They had been placed there, hidden in a location their father knew would not immediately be searched. A location he had chosen deliberately in the darkness before dawn when no one was watching, or so he believed. Shauna Watts was found in a shallow grave near the same site. She had been buried in the earth less than 2 feet down in a location that was remote, isolated, and known to Chris through his work at the site. She was still 15 weeks pregnant when she was laid in that ground. Unborn Nico Watts was buried with her. The discovery sent a shockwave through the nation. People who had been following the missing persons case, people who had shared Shanann's image online, who had written comments of hope and prayer on the family's social media pages, suddenly confronted a reality that was almost impossible to absorb. This was not a woman who had left. This was not a custody dispute or a family in crisis. This was something far darker. And the person responsible was the one who had stood in front of cameras asking for her return. At this point in the investigation, law enforcement had enough. Enough evidence, enough inconsistency, and enough to confront Chris Watts directly. What followed was one of the most revealing interrogations in recent criminal history. A conversation between investigators and a man who had spent 3 days maintaining a lie, now sitting in a room where the truth was about to close in on him from every direction.
We'll be in the area. Okay. So Chris, I might need your help a little bit. Okay. Where is, I'm assuming your wife, Sherry's in bed with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a look in there and then talk to your kids. Does she have any dirty laundry that hasn't been touched by anybody else besides her? Okay. Is any of your laundry in there with it? Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, I just think it's a family. It's gonna happen. How about all your kids' rooms?
So their laundry would be in here.
And has any of it been touched by you today?
I'll put it in there.
You put it in there?
Yeah.
How about dirty laundry?
This is their dirty laundry here.
Okay. You usually pick it up off the floor and put it in there?
Yep.
Beds? Have you touched their beds today?
I made them.
You made them. Okay. Do you like pick up the pillow, that kind of stuff, or do you just like? Let me think here.
Let me see it.
Yeah.
Anything that nothing I could have ever touched at all.
How about actually shoes would be good too? Shoes that maybe you haven't touched since they've worn them. Is there cleaning?
Yeah, they didn't clean, but sometimes the blankies get put in there.
Okay.
But that's the one she usually uses, the butterfly one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you touched it today?
Yesterday when I put it on the bed.
Okay. Shoes?
Shoes are downstairs.
Okay. And probably your wife's shoes too.
Okay. Sophie's shoes and Bella's shoes on this side.
Okay. What's the most recent picture you remember her wearing? And
Probably outside because they were wet from a pool party.
Okay.
Does that still work?
What day was that?
That was on Saturday.
Okay.
So the two right there.
Put them up on the chair?
Call one's going to be from KOA, another one is going to be CIO request, and it's going to be the Denver Post.
Everything got wet, right? They were in there.
In those final hours before his arrest, Chris Watts continued to project calm. He was cooperative. He answered questions. He expressed concern. He performed. And what makes it so extraordinary to watch is the knowledge of what investigators already knew as they sat across from him. They had the surveillance footage. They had the physical evidence. They had the cell phone data. They were not asking questions because they needed answers. They were asking questions because they were giving Chris Watts the opportunity to choose truth or continued deception. He chose deception right up until the moment he had no choice left. Chris Watts was arrested on August 15th, 2018. But the investigation was far from over. Because the story Chris Watts was about to tell, inside an interrogation room, facing the full weight of what investigators knew, would go through not one, but multiple versions. And each version was more disturbing than the last. The interrogation of Chris Watts is a document of human psychology that criminologists, investigators, and behavioral analysts have studied extensively since it was made public. It is not a Hollywood interrogation. There are no raised voices, no slam tables, no dramatic confrontations. It is something far more unsettling than that. It is a quiet, methodical, deeply human process of dismantling a lie and watching the person behind that lie slowly realize they have nowhere left to go. The investigators who sat with Chris Watts that day were skilled. They used what is known in law enforcement as a non-confrontational approach, a technique designed to lower a subject's defenses, establish rapport, and create an environment in which confession feels safer than continued denial. They were not aggressive. They were almost gentle. They spoke to Chris like men who understood him, who sympathized with him, who could see. They implied that he was not a bad person, that something had simply gone very wrong. And they used something else. They used his daughters. Investigators brought up Bella and Celeste repeatedly. They spoke about the girls with warmth and affection. They referenced their ages, their personalities, what Shannon had shared about them on social media. They reminded Chris of the father he had appeared to be. And then, carefully, deliberately, they suggested to him that Shannon had done something to the girls, that he had walked in on something terrible, that perhaps the truth was not that he was a violent man, but that he was a desperate father who had reacted to an unimaginable provocation. It was an investigative technique. It was not the truth, but it gave Chris Watts a door, a way to confess without having to be the soul monster. And he walked through it. In his first confession, Chris Watts told investigators that he had come home to find Shannon harming the girls, that he had reacted in a rage, that he had taken Shannon's life in response to what she had done to the children. It was a story designed to spread the moral weight of what had happened, to place some portion of guilt on a woman who could no longer speak for herself. It was not just dishonest. It was a desecration of Shannon's character, delivered by the man who had taken her life. Investigators did not believe it, and the forensic evidence did not support it. The manner and circumstances of the children's deaths were inconsistent with the account Chris provided. The physical evidence told a different story, and investigators calmly, persistently returned to Chris Watts again and again, probing, pressing, asking him to explain what the evidence had already revealed. What you're about to see is footage from inside that interrogation room. Watch how investigators respond to Chris's account. Watch how Chris manages himself. The pauses, the word choices, the moments where the story almost holds and then begins to come apart. This is the most important room in this entire case, and what happens in it is extraordinary.
I brought Graham in here because we want to talk to you about the results, okay?
Okay.
So, it was completely clear that you were not interested in the testing, and I think you already know that. You did not pass the polygraph test.
Okay.
Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise. Chris, I know stuff.
Take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath right now.
There's a reason you feel sick to your stomach. And when people hold stuff inside, it makes you physically ill. And I can just tell on your face, I can tell from the second you walked in that you were wanting to just come clean and just be done with this. And I appreciate that because you knew sitting down in that chair that you weren't going to pass today, and you knew I was going to find out because I told you that. And then you continued to stay knowing that you could, at the end, say, you know what, I just need to get this off my chest. Like, I just need to tell you what happened. We're not here to play games. We're not here to do any of that with you. We just want to know what happened. So can you start from the beginning and tell us what happened?
Everything that I have told you, I did not lie on this polygraph. I don't know how much I could tell you right now. Like, I did not.
It's not right now because you did not pass the polygraph. I know you were being deceptive, so that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Cheyenne, Bella, and Celeste. That's the issue right now.
Good.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I know you want to tell us. I can see it in your face. Holding this lie in is going to do nothing for you.
I know this. Like, okay. I'm not like trying to like cover things up. Like,
yeah, but you kind of are because it's normal. Normal people will do that. Normal people that make a mistake initially are going to go, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. That's normal. I would expect that. It's just like if you ask your kid, did you write on the wall? And they go, no. And you're like, you have marker on your hand. Like, I know you just wrote on the wall. And they're like, oh, okay. That's a natural reaction that someone's going to initially lie about something like that and then eventually tell the truth. So this is your eventually telling the truth time. This is where the rubber meets the road, Chris. Like, don't let this continue any longer, please.
I'm not trying to make anything continue. Like, I want them back home, like.
But you know they're not coming back home. You know that.
I don't know them back in my head. I hope they come back home.
But you know they're not.
I hope they come back home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know they're not coming back home.
Chris, tell me I'm confused. Okay. And here's what confused about me. I told you that we've done some work overnight.
Yeah.
I told you that we booked out a lot of things. Okay, that wasn't a lie. We don't love a lot more than you think we do. Okay. And here's what we're confused. You're this great guy. I'm not just telling you that, okay? I'm telling you that because everyone tells us that. Okay? We can't find anyone to say anything bad about you. Chris is a great guy. He's a good father. He's a good man. We're confused as to why you're not taking care of your beautiful children.
I'm not taking care of them right now.
Right now. Okay,
I don't know where they're at. Honestly, I do not know where they're at. If I could have my babies back home right now, I would. I want them back. I want everybody back. That is the God's honest truth.
Figure out why there's two Chris's. Okay? We talked about that last night.
Yes.
We just can't figure it out. There's a Chris. Okay? If somebody asks me, like, routine, I'll say, that's the truth. So, it is very surprising to me, and it warms my heart that you're the type of dad who can pack a bag in the morning. You know it's just what to put in there. You know just what to put in there as a backup in case they have an accident. Okay? You know what the clothes to put in there. You know what they have for breakfast. You know what they have for a snack and a dinner and a nighttime snack. You can today lying about something else. We need to talk about that, okay? I cheated on her. I know. And she's very good. Yeah, I'm not proud of it. I didn't think anything like that could happen. I don't think I would ever do it, but I did. Keep going. She accused me of it. I denied it. I cheated on her, and I felt horrible for it. Like, she was pregnant, and it was, I don't want to, I didn't hurt her. I cheated on her. I hurt her emotionally. I cheated on her. And I feel absolutely horrible about this, but that's what I've been holding. When I was at Nichol again, I was with her. I was in that with her. Keep going. That 5 weeks I was alone, I was with her most of the time. You're doing a good job. This is the Chris that I knew would come out today. This is the Chris who tells the truth because you're a truth teller.
What eventually emerged, over multiple sessions, through layers of denial and revision, was a confession that was, even in its final form, marked by the same quality that had defined Chris Watts's behavior from the beginning: control. An attempt to manage the narrative even while surrendering to it. The truth, as investigators ultimately pieced it together from physical evidence, cell phone data, and multiple versions of Chris's own account, was this. In the early hours of August 13th, 2018, Chris Watts ended Shanann's life inside their home while their daughters slept nearby. He then transported Shanann and the children to the Survey 319 work site, where he committed the acts that investigators discovered on August 15th. The motive, as investigators and prosecutors would later articulate it, was this. Chris Watts wanted to start a new life. He wanted to be free of the financial pressure, the failing marriage, the responsibilities of fatherhood. He wanted the life he had been imagining, with Nichol Kessinger, unburdened by the family he had built and no longer wanted. And he had decided, in the cold and calculated darkness of that August night, that the only way to get that life was to remove everything standing between him and it. He was 33 years old. His daughters were 4 and 3. His wife was 15 weeks pregnant. This is the question that stops people cold. It is the question that was asked in every news report, every true crime forum, every family dinner where this case came up. How does a person do this? Not just the act itself, but all of it. The calm, the performance, the press conference, the lie maintained for 3 days while his wife and daughters lay hidden at a work site he visited every morning. The answer, according to the criminologists and forensic psychologists who have studied this case in depth, is not a simple one. Chris Watts does not fit neatly into any single psychological profile. He was not someone who displayed obvious warning signs in the way that true crime audiences often expect. No explosive temper, no history of documented violence, no record of confrontations with law enforcement. He was, by external measure, a non-entity, unremarkable, controlled. But control, in this context, is not a neutral trait. The same capacity for control that allowed Chris Watts to hold down a job, maintain relationships, and function in normal society. That same capacity allowed him to compartmentalize his actions with a thoroughness that most people find incomprehensible. He did not, by all available evidence, experience the kind of internal collapse that most people would expect to follow the decision to harm his family. He continued. He organized. He planned. He executed. And then he performed grief for the cameras while Bella and Celeste and Shanann and Nico lay hidden in Weld County. There is a concept in psychology known as the mask of sanity, a phrase first used by psychiatrist Hervey Cleckley to describe individuals who present a perfectly normal exterior while harboring inner emotional states that are profoundly abnormal. Chris Watts, in many respects, embodies this concept in ways that researchers continue to analyze. He looked like a good person. He behaved, in public, like a good person. He had all the external characteristics of a loving husband and father. And yet what was happening behind that mask was something entirely different. What the case of Chris Watts forces us to confront, and this is the uncomfortable truth at the heart of this story, is that the people who look the most like the people we trust are sometimes the people we should be most careful about trusting. Not because everyone who appears kind and calm is secretly dangerous. That is not the lesson here. The lesson is subtler and harder to live with. We are not always equipped to see the truth about the people closest to us. We judge people by what they show us. And some people are extraordinarily skilled at deciding what to show. On November 6, 2018, Christopher Lee Watts appeared in the Weld County District Court in Greeley, Colorado, for his sentencing hearing. He had pleaded guilty to all charges in a deal that allowed him to avoid the death penalty. The charges included 3 counts of first-degree murder for Sean Ann, Bella, and Celeste, as well as 2 counts of unlawful termination of pregnancy, 1 count of tampering with a deceased human body, and 3 counts of tampering with physical evidence. He entered the courtroom as someone who, for months, had controlled the narrative around himself with extraordinary discipline. But in that room, on that day, the control was over. There was no press conference to manage, no investigator to perform for, no version of events to construct. There was only the truth, read aloud by prosecutors in plain, documented language, before the families of the people he had taken and the nation watching. What you're about to hear is the prosecutor's statement at Chris Watts' sentencing, in a courtroom that had held its breath for months, waiting for this moment, waiting for the lies to be formally replaced by facts. This is the statement that finally laid it all bare. Listen to every word.
You would like to make on behalf of the prosecution? Yes, please.
Your Honor, there are no words to adequately describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who were a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how? Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this: the defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives, not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands. We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering. Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a centimeter and a half laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died. She fought back for her life as her father smothered her. Celeste had no such injuries. In fact, she had no external injuries at all. But according to the medical examiner, she was smothered nonetheless. The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed. In one final sign of callousness for his wife, his daughters, and their unborn son, and their remains, he drove them to a location that he thought no one would ever find them, to one of the oil tank batteries with which he was so familiar. He knew this was safe. He had texted a coworker the night before saying, "I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it." He had carefully ensured that he would be alone in the middle of the plains to secrete away the remains of his family in a place that he hoped they would never be found. In one final measure of disrespect for the family he once had, he ensured that they would not be together, even in death, or so he thought. He disposed of them in different locations. He buried Shanann and Nichol in a shallow grave away from the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility. Different tanks, so these little girls wouldn't be together in death. Imagine this, Your Honor. This defendant took those little girls and put them through a hatch at the top of an oil tank, 8 inches in diameter. Bella had scratches on her left buttocks from being shoved through this hole. A tuft of blonde hair was found on the edge of one of these hatches. The defendant told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CC's because of the sound that the splashes made. These were his daughters. Significantly, when his coworkers arrived at the tank battery later that morning, to a person, they all described him as acting completely normally. It was a normal workday, even while his daughters sank in the oil and water not far away from him. And then his efforts at deception truly began. We've all seen the emotionless interviews that the defendant gives to the local media asking for help in locating his family. We watched as he claimed that the house was empty without them and that he hoped that they were somewhere safe and that he just wanted them to come home. He told investigators that they were at home sleeping when he left for work that morning and that Shanann had told him that she was taking the girls to a friend's house for the day. What is striking about this case, Your Honor, beyond the horrors that I've already described to you, is the number of collateral victims that he created by his actions. While he stood in front of TV cameras asking for the safe return of his family, scores of law enforcement officers, neighbors, friends and family scoured the area, fretted for their safe return. They texted him begging for any information and sending him their best wishes, all the while he hid what he had done. The list of indirect victims does not end there. Think of the firefighters and the Colorado State Patrol hazmat experts who had to don protective suits and who were called upon to pull Bella and Celeste out of those oil tanks. Or the coroner employees who had to conduct these autopsies.
Shanann's family spoke at the sentencing. Her father, Frank Rzusek, addressed Chris Watts directly. What he said, the words of a man who had lost his daughter, his grandchildren, and an unborn grandson to someone he had trusted, is beyond the reach of adequate description. It was raw. It was real. It was grief without performance, without management, without the careful construction that had defined Chris Watts's every public moment. It was, in its honesty, the exact opposite of everything Chris Watts had been. Chris Watts was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. He received an additional combined sentence of 48 years for additional charges. He was transported to the Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin, a maximum security federal facility where he remains incarcerated to this day. He has given subsequent interviews and made additional statements from prison. In 2019, he gave a series of jailhouse interviews to author Karita Bowen and investigator Tammy Lee, in which he provided yet another version of events. One that again shifted the framing of what happened. One that again attempted, even from a prison cell, to exercise some measure of control over his own story. Investigators and victims' advocates reacted to these new statements with deep skepticism, noting that Chris Watts's pattern of reshaping his account to suit his circumstances had never truly stopped. Because here is what no one told you about this case. Even after the sentencing, even after the life sentences, even after everything, questions remain. Questions that have not been fully answered. Questions about what really happened in that house that night. About whether the full truth of Chris Watts's actions has ever been completely known. The case that appeared closed may have more layers still. Years after the sentencing, the case of Chris Watts continues to generate investigation, analysis, and, from Chris Watts himself, ongoing attempts to reconstruct the narrative around his actions. This is not unusual for cases of this nature. But what makes the Chris Watts case particularly persistent in the public consciousness is the degree to which it forces a confrontation with questions that don't have comfortable answers. People continue to analyze the body cam footage. Behavioral analysts publish new examinations of his press conference performance. Criminologists assign this case in courses on deception, on intimate partner violence, on the psychology of the controlled and methodical offender. It refuses to be closed, not because the legal questions are unresolved. They are, but because the human questions remain open. How did Shauna miss it? This is a question asked constantly, and it deserves a careful answer. The answer is, she didn't entirely. Shauna knew her marriage was in trouble. She knew Chris had grown distant. She had spoken to friends about her fears. She had done everything a woman in her position is typically told to do. Communicated, confronted, tried to address the problem directly. What she did not know, what she had no way of knowing, was the degree to which the man she had married had internally withdrawn from any sense of connection to her and their family. Hindsight makes it look like the signs were obvious. In real time, Shannon was dealing with what appeared to be a troubled marriage, not a lethal threat. That distinction matters enormously. How did Nichol Kessinger miss it? Again, she largely didn't. Nichol Kessinger, when the truth emerged, cooperated fully with investigators. She provided information about Chris's behavior, his statements, the conversations they had had. She had not known about Shanann's pregnancy. She had not known the extent of the lies she had been told. When investigators presented her with the reality of the situation, she was stunned, then devastated, then determined to help in any way she could. She has since largely disappeared from public life. What about the people who knew Chris Watts in his professional life, his social life, his community? Almost universally, they describe a man who registered as pleasant, unremarkable, and completely without red flags. That is the nature of the mask. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't flicker in places where other people can see. It holds and holds and holds until the moment it doesn't. In true crime coverage, there's a tendency, and it is worth naming, to focus so heavily on the perpetrator, on the psychology of the offender, on the mechanics of the crime, that the people who were lost begin to recede into the background. They become names, facts, details in a timeline, and they deserve more than that. Shannon Watts was 34 years old when she died. She was a woman who had overcome significant health challenges. She had built a life from genuine effort and genuine love. She was a mother who documented her family with real warmth, not for performance, but because she genuinely believed in the beauty of what she was building. Her Facebook videos are still online. You can watch them. You can see her laughing with her daughters, talking about her pregnancy, sharing the small moments of a life that was full and real and entirely her own. She was not a character in someone else's story. She was the center of her own. Bella Marie Watts was 4 years old. By all accounts, she was perceptive, sensitive, and loving. A child who was already beginning to show the kind of emotional intelligence that takes most people decades to develop. She adored her mother. She adored her younger sister. She was, in the way that 4-year-olds can be, already unmistakably herself. Celeste Catherine Watts was 3 years old. She was described by everyone who knew her as exuberant, joyful, and utterly fearless. The kind of child who runs toward everything rather than away from it. She had a laugh that people who knew her still talk about. She was 3 years old. Nichol Lee Watts was 15 weeks old in the womb. He had been named. He had been anticipated. He had been wanted by his mother, by his grandparents, by everyone who had been told about him. He had not yet drawn a breath outside of Shanann's body. He was a person in becoming, and he is gone. This is the reality at the center of this case. Not the psychology of the offender, though that matters. Not the deception, though that matters too. The reality at the center of this case is that a mother and her children, one unborn, were taken from a life that was entirely theirs to live, by someone who was supposed to protect them. Here is something worth sitting with as we move toward the end of this story. Because there is a version of the Chris Watts case, a version that is tempting because it offers a kind of false comfort, in which the clues were always there, always visible, and the tragedy was a failure of observation. If only someone had noticed sooner. If only Shannon had seen it coming. If only investigators had moved faster. This version is not accurate, and accepting it uncritically actually does a disservice to everyone involved. Yes, there were behavioral signals in the body cam footage that, analyzed in retrospect, are consistent with deception. Yes, there were financial pressures that, in hindsight, added context to Chris's state of mind. Yes, Shannon had sensed that something was wrong. But the clues that seem obvious in hindsight are often only visible because we already know the outcome. This is what psychologists call hindsight bias, the tendency, after an event, to believe we would have predicted it if only we had been paying attention. The honest truth is that Chris Watts was not someone who broadcast his intentions. He was someone who carefully concealed them. He did not have a history of violence. He did not have a documented pattern of threatening behavior. He was, by every external measure, a man managing his life, not a man careening toward catastrophe. The tragedy of this case is not that the clues were ignored. The tragedy is that they were subtle enough and his performance consistent enough that they were genuinely hard to see in real time. And this is the question this case leaves all of us with. Not the dramatic, satisfying version. Would you have seen it coming? But the quieter, harder version. What do we actually know about the inner lives of the people we share our lives with? What access do we genuinely have to someone else's internal world? And how do we balance the appropriate trust that makes human connection possible with the recognition that some people are, by design, unknowable in the ways that matter most? There is no clean answer. If there were, this case would not still be generating the depth of response it does years after its conclusion. It resonates because it touches something real about the fundamental vulnerability of loving someone, of trusting someone, of building a life with someone and assuming, because they are there every day, that you know them. Christopher Lee Watts remains incarcerated at the Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. He will never be eligible for parole. The legal matter, in terms of his own fate, is settled. What is not settled? What continues to develop in ways that the true crime community, investigators, and the families affected continue to monitor, is the fuller picture of Chris Watts' psychology, his actions, and the truthfulness of his various accounts. As mentioned, he gave additional statements after his conviction that again revised elements of his story. Investigators and advocates for Shanann's family have consistently pushed back on these new accounts, noting that the revisions appear designed to serve Chris Watts' interests rather than to illuminate truth. Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandra Razusek, continue to be advocates for their daughter's memory. They have spoken publicly about Shanann, about the girls, about Nichol, not just as victims of crime, but as people who deserve to be known for who they were, not only for how they died. Their advocacy is a quiet, persistent act of love in the face of an incomprehensible loss. Nichol Atkinson, whose 911 call started everything, has largely stepped out of the public eye. But within the true crime community, her name is spoken with deep respect. She is remembered as the person who refused to wait, who trusted her instincts, who did not give Chris Watts the time he needed to build an even more elaborate lie. She is, in every meaningful sense, the reason this case was solved as quickly as it was. The home on Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado, was eventually sold. The neighborhood where this happened is a quiet, suburban development, the kind of place where people move to raise families, where children ride bikes in the street, where the lawns are neat and the houses look exactly like what they are supposed to be. It looks from the outside like safety, like normalcy, like nothing could go wrong here. That is precisely the point. There is a reason the case of Chris Watts has not faded from public consciousness the way other cases sometimes do. It is not just because it was shocking, though it was. It is not just because the victims were young, though they were heartbreakingly. It is because this case holds up a mirror, an uncomfortable, unflinching mirror, and asks us to look honestly at what we see. We see a man who looked like everyone's neighbor. We see a family that looked like happiness. We see the gap between the surface of a life and what was happening beneath it, and we feel the vertigo of recognizing how often we trust surfaces, how often we take the image at face value, how often the story someone tells about themselves becomes the story we accept. We see Shanann, vibrant, loving, fighting to hold her family together, and we feel the weight of how much she deserved better. We feel it not as an abstract moral statement, but as a genuine human response to genuine human loss. She was real. Her daughters were real. Her unborn son was real. Their absence from the world is a loss that cannot be measured, only acknowledged. And we see, perhaps most disturbingly, how ordinary the extraordinary can look. How a person can be standing right in front of you, performing normalcy, and be somewhere entirely different on the inside. How the face that says I love you and the face that is already planning something unthinkable can be the exact same face. Chris Watts will spend the rest of his life in a prison cell. For Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, that is the only justice available in a world where justice can never fully account for what was taken. It is insufficient. It is, nevertheless, what we have. The trail that led here, through deception and denial, through a performed grief and a calculated crime, through the courage of a friend who trusted her instincts and the diligence of investigators who followed the evidence wherever it led, is a dark one. But it was followed. And because it was followed, the truth is known. That truth matters, not because it brings anyone back, but because the people who were lost deserve, at the very least, to be known. Not as a missing persons case, not as a news headline, but as Shanann, as Bella, as Celeste, as Nico. People who were here, people who deserve to stay. Thank you for watching this investigation all the way to the end. If this video made you think, made you feel, made you look at something differently, that is exactly what Dark Trail Files exists to do. We don't just cover cases. We go inside them. We follow the behavior, the psychology, the evidence, and the human cost, because every case is, at its core, a human story. And human stories deserve more than headlines. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. Hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Leave a comment below. Tell us what moment in this case stayed with you. What question this story left you with. We read every comment. We are here for this conversation. This is Dark Trail Files. The truth is always darker than the surface, and we will always follow it.